You list your home kind of late spring, early summer, hoping to hit the market kind of right at the peak selling season, but then your home sat on the market all summer, didn't have very many showings. Now we're heading into the winter, it's November, and I guess we're going to be here through breakup. You're wondering, oh my gosh, how did we get here? What happened? Don't worry, I've got some answers for you. I was talking with a new client the other day, and they had done kind of all of these things. They had gotten their home on the market with another company and hit the market early spring, spent all summer on the market, very few showings, and now they're looking at spending another winter in Fairbanks. The question was, why didn't my home sell? And far be it from me to pick apart somebody else's work, but generally speaking, there are about 6 reasons why, in just about every reason, a home sale might be a little bit more difficult. We're going to cover the first 2 that are kind of out of our control, and then we'll jump into the last ones that we have a little bit of influence over. So the first one is market conditions. Interest rates right now are higher than they have been in decades. This is coming right off of the back of interest rates having been lower than they had been in decades. But the problem is that we've got one group, our buyers, that are looking at the change, and what they're seeing is a huge change in their monthly payment. So for instance, just to give you a little bit of a look back at the past 6 months, for instance, 6 months ago, buyers were getting around a 6% interest rate, and kind of depending on what their finances look like. A home that was priced at about $450,000 at that time would have looked at about a $3,230 monthly payment. Fast forward to now, we're sitting at about 8% average interest rates. That same home would have, at 8%, would be a much higher monthly payment. So if that same buyer wanted to keep the same monthly payment, they'd have to be shopping in a different price range. And in order to find that same monthly payment, they'd have to start looking at $375,000 price range. So if we look at a $375,000 price range homes 6 months ago at 6%, they were looking at a $2,800 monthly payment. Well, now these same buyers that were shopping in the $375 price range today at 8% are experiencing a price, that price range that they're looking for is down to about $300,000. $300,000 at 6%, 6 months ago was about $2,350 a month monthly payment. Well, now, in order to get that same monthly payment at 8%, we're shopping at about $250,000. So while buyers are having to make this change very, very quickly, what we haven't seen is a big change and a quick change in our real estate prices. So while the wave hit very quickly for our buyers, it's not hitting super quickly for our sellers. And the thing to keep in mind for this, because we're remembering why didn't our home sell, is that before, when we were in this time of seller strength, when we were in a seller's market, we had a lot of negotiation strength. And I say we, I'm speaking of we collectively. The seller had a lot of negotiation strength. And coming out of that, shifting into a buyer's market, the buyers are going to carry a lot more of that negotiation strength. So the offers that we're going to start seeing are going to be favoring the buyers quite a bit more. So in the fall of 2022, about 11 months ago, we started seeing a shift away from that seller's market into a buyer's market. And now buyers are sitting a little bit more in a power position. But what we're seeing still is that homes that are priced according to data and not necessarily feelings are selling well. We'll talk about pricing a little bit later, so make sure to stick around for that part. But the thing to remember is that this all boils down to monthly payment. And if buyers can't find a reasonable monthly payment, then they're going to explore other options to include renting. They don't mind waiting. If they can't find what they're looking for right now, then they'll just wait until they do, or they'll rent until they do. And ultimately, the other thing to remember with this too, ultimately being in Fairbanks North Pole, there's not really much that we can do about inflation or the national economic trends that affect interest rates, because here we are. There's also not a lot we can do for the next one. Next on our list is location. Location. Isn't much that you can do to the location. Now, that being said, there are a few things that, coming up when it comes to your location that are definitely within your control that kind of affect the location. So let's get into those. This next one is accessibility. And this one comes up a lot more than you'd think. Buyers today want the smoothest, easiest possible path to homeownership. That includes an easy transaction. They want to be able to view your home easily. They want to see it easily online. We want to remove as many barriers as possible between your home and these buyers. If we are standing in the way of getting your home shown to buyers, then we need to stop doing that. So we need to make your home as accommodating as possible. This can be really tricky, especially if we have pets living in the home. But one of the things that every agent has access to is a program called Showing Time, where we can essentially have a little bit of lead time between when an agent can set a showing to when they can actually have that appointment. So if we had about 2 hours, 3 hours worth of time where, like, if they set the appointment at 1, they wouldn't be able to have the appointment until 4. So it would give 3 hours to head home, get the dogs out, just in time for the showing. So that way you had a little bit of time. We can also block off portions of the day. So that way, if we wanted to have evening showings or just Saturday, Sundays, we could do that. But keep in mind, what we want to do and what we want to provide is a super easy and accessible experience to get as many buyers into your home as possible. So any roadblocks that we put in front of that process is not going to help. The big thing that we absolutely want to stay away from is, at all costs, avoid declining showings. That being said, every time we say no to a showing, we're saying no to a buyer. And if we're saying no to a buyer, then we're basically saying no to selling your home. And then we've just put a whole lot of work into nothing for you. As the world turns, this happens all the time. Showings just kind of don't work out for people's schedules sometimes. So if a showing kind of gets in the way of life, because it happens, just give us a call. We can work on rescheduling a showing. It just takes a phone call and we can make it happen. But just outright declining a showing, no bueno. So if that's been a thing, then that could have been standing in your way again. All right, next on our list is conditions. This one's tricky because if you bought your home kind of at the height of the pandemic, then you likely bought your home kind of at the peak of a pretty good seller's market. This means that you likely paid a little bit more for your home, and you may have a pretty good chance that you negotiated around repairs for your home. I say chances are good. During that time, I sold hundreds of homes, and I saw thousands of offers, and a lot of those offers had folks negotiating their home as is, where is, asking the seller not to do any repairs. So I know it was happening, but the fallout of that is that now we've got homes, folks trying to sell homes with potentially 3 years worth of deferred maintenance. And the home inspection lists that we're getting now, they're quite a bit more lengthy than they used to be. And we're seeing quite a bit more deferred maintenance items showing up on them. So if we're watching this video in an effort to get prepared for selling your home, I would highly recommend getting a pre-listing home inspection to identify some of the areas that you might need to update or bring back into the safe, sound, and sanitary condition that home inspectors use for their standard, because all of those things could certainly add to a buyer's perception of your home's value, because a whole lot of deferred maintenance items stack up when a buyer's walk into a home. Essentially what we want to do with your home's condition is create such a large value for the price that buyers can't help but compete for it. That can be difficult, especially when you're starting behind. But what are some things that you can do to help improve the condition, apart from working on repairs and getting the pre-listing home inspection? The other thing that I'd recommend is, a lot of times, interior paint is a great way to get a fresh look on the market. Just getting something light and neutral. Now, this is kind of like a white paint, but when you combine new paint and in a light neutral color, along with having your windows completely uncovered, all of those things work really, really well to maximize or make the space look quite a bit bigger than it might appear in real life. So by putting a fresh coat of paint on the interior of your home, it definitely helps you get a more updated look, and you can maximize the look and feel of your space just by keeping the windows uncovered too. So by flooding your rooms and flooding the whole space with natural light, it helps the space really pop in person as well as in pictures. And according to the National Association of Realtors, about 90% of buyers are finding their home online through pictures well before they're even viewing them in person. So doing any kind of little light tricks or anything will really help, pretty considerably. because again, you want to set yourself apart from everybody else that's on the market. Another thing to consider is a flooring change. I'm going to probably talk about this a little bit, but buyers today, they don't want a home that they're going to have to rehab, because buyers are so focused on cost going into a home. They're not interested in anything less than a turnkey home. One way that we can get a little bit closer to that turnkey that's quite a bit less expensive than expensive remodels is flooring. So another thing to consider, if you've got the time and the money, may not be there every time, but if you can consider a flooring change, a lot of times, as I was saying, buyers don't want to find a home that they're going to have to move into and then do a whole bunch of rehab on. There are some of those buyers out there, but for the most part, they want a finished, turnkey home that they're going to move into, and that includes flooring. So being able to be the one home that is completely apart from the market, that's got the brand new flooring and brand new paint and has been updated since the 70s is pretty important. So the next recommendation I have when it comes to the condition of the home is to keep it clean. I want you to close your eyes and imagine buyers as little gazelle on the African savannah. So they're there, they're just hanging out, eating whatever they eat, doing gazelle things, and as one's like putting its head down, getting some grub, another one's up looking around, making sure everything's cool. But the second that anything is not cool, when something doesn't look right, something doesn't smell right, something doesn't sound right, or even something doesn't feel right, then they are gone, they scatter. Well, the exact same thing happens to buyers. We've seen it happen hundreds of times. We walk in and it's just like, boom, it's an instant reaction. If we don't create a space for gazelle, then the gazelle will not come to our space. And we can start from keeping the space clean, because if the space smells like lions, if it smells like things that are preying upon the gazelle, then the gazelle are never going to hang out there. So by removing clutter and dust and debris, anything that might be on the floor, not only is it going to make the space look awesome for photos, but it will also make the gazelle want to stay and hang out and imagine that space as their space, because this space was clearly made for gazelle. If we're going to make a space for gazelle, that means that this new space, which was your space, it can't look like your home, it can't smell like your home, it can't sound like your home, it can't smell like a lion, it can't look like a lion lives there, it can't sound like a lion's roaring around there, it can't feel like a lion's house. We've got to make it look like a gazelle's house, smell like a gazelle's house, sound like a gazelle's house, figuratively speaking. The gazelle has to feel like they are at home in their house. By achieving that, buyers are more likely to spend a lot more time at the house. So you'll be sitting there and you'll be like, I gotta be at hockey in like 10 minutes and all of the hockey gear's inside. How are we gonna do this? They are still inside. Their showing was an hour and a half ago. And you'll call me up. These people are still here. Can you call them and get them out of the house? I'm like, this is a great thing. You've got somebody that's still in your house for an hour and a half on the showing. It's pretty fantastic. But the problem is that if we go the other way and they smell lions, they see lions, they imagine a lion is there, they're not going to hang out. They're not going to visualize a future in your home. And the slightest sight, sound, smell, they'll scatter and take off. Next on our list is purchase price. If you experienced this extended long, kind of days on market over the summer, coming into the winter, chances are pretty good that you weren't priced appropriately, because the buyers there were quite a few buyers that were shopping. They were targeting what they were looking for. And when they found homes that they were looking for, they wrote them up, got them under contract, got them closed. They were buyers buying like they're in a buyer's market. And a lot of sellers, like I said before, still feel like we're in a seller's market. And that's just not how things are going. And I think that the sooner that we can realize that, the better we're going to start feeling about things. Things are the way that they are. There's not a lot we can do about it. So today, in order to get a maximum number of showings, we need to price pretty aggressively. And a lot of people will hear, oh, we need to price aggressively, and they'll think we need to price low. That's not what I mean by pricing aggressively. By pricing aggressively, I mean we need to price according to data. Like I said, when people hear that, they think that means price low. But that internal correction is a feeling that they're going to get less than what they feel like they should get for their home. And that's understandable. Yeah, it's a tough time. It really is. it happens all the time that we'll sit down and have a conversation with somebody, and the purchase price or the average price that we end up finding is quite a bit less than we thought it was. That happens, but we can sit down and we can be really upset about it, or we can come up with a plan. And a lot of times those plans don't include necessarily moving today, but that's okay too. We can come up with a plan for the future. That's all right. So by pricing to the data, if we find out that data is not necessarily what we thought it was, then we can just make better decisions for the future. But if we are, we hit the data and we're looking at where we should be priced, and we're comfortable making decisions moving forward because we have to relocate. Remember, even though in the back of your mind you might be having that like, I know that it says all this information says that we should get about $300 for the home, but I think we should get $350. I really think we can do it. I bet we could. So-and-so, he sold his house like 6 months ago and was able to get $350 for the house. And it's just right down the block. So I bet we could get $350 for it. Because his house is just like a little bit bigger than ours. That can happen. Unfortunately, sometimes the data, the only true metric that we have, doesn't necessarily match up with what we want. We lived, for lack of a better phrase, we lived in the land of summer for a little bit too long. We had it too good for too long. Now we're moving back into the winter times. Things are going to be a little bit harder for sellers. The temptation to price above where the data supports is certainly there, but the thing to keep in mind, and part of the big danger behind overpricing, stems from buyer search intent. And I may have mentioned this before, but 90% of buyers are finding their homes online, according to the National Association of Realtors, in one form or another before they ever view their home in person. So when that happens, when they're searching for these homes online, they're going to fbxhomesearch.com and they're like, oh, this site's the best. And they're searching in $25,000 increments. And they are hyper aware of what their monthly payment is. And we kind of talked about this before in market conditions. They're hyper aware of what that monthly payment is. And they know that if they go above $250, they go above $300, then they are going to be well outside of what they can afford. And so they're just not going to search for anything above $300. So if your home, because we used that example earlier, you decided, well, I think we can get $300. I'm sorry, I think we can get $350. If you've priced your home $50,000 above where your buyer is searching, then they're never going to see your home until you get to the point where your home is priced in the area that they're searching. So either one thing is going to happen first. Either your price range is going to have to change, or the buyer's interest rate is going to have to change to a point where their monthly payment is affordable enough to be able to afford your home. And present is any indicator of the future, then our interest rates are probably not going to get to a point anytime super soon where they are low enough to drop their monthly payment to a point where your home is now in the affordable range for your buyer. So while you made an emotional decision to price above where your home is priced, they're making a data-focused decision. And what will end up happening is longer days on market, while you either make the decision to reduce price, or somebody hopes to, or I guess you hope to have, somebody write a low offer to negotiate. But even if you were to put that into the remarks, where somebody could hopefully find that, that you're willing to negotiate, one, that's a terrible thing to give away, that you're not firm on any of the terms or conditions that you're asking for. That's terrible to just advertise. But second, the people that are going to be afforded or that can afford your home are never going to see it because it's never going to pop up in their searches. And apart from that, the flip side of this, the folks that are pre-approved for that $325 to $375 price range, we'll give $25,000 on either side of that. The folks that are pre-approved for that price range, that are comfortable with that monthly payment, would be looking at the condition of your home versus the condition of the homes that priced according to the data. And what they will typically find is that those homes will likely have a condition at or around the like homes, or the homes that support the data that they are priced at. And because of the emotional decision, you have priced yourself well outside of your market in a home or in a price range that you can't really compete with. So by pricing yourself out of the market, you potentially put yourself in a situation where you're going to have outrageous days on market. And if you end up getting down to a price where a buyer ends up writing an offer, how long your home's been on the market, and how hard is it going to be to then get to a point where you were able to get under contract and make a net profit. One thing I didn't talk about when it comes to pricing are the positives of pricing below the market recommendations. This is pretty huge. So every time we move down a little bit in price, we're making our home a little bit more affordable. And as we make our home more affordable, that increases our buyer pool. So with more buyers comes more competition. More competition comes better offers, and better offers come more preferential terms and conditions. Basically, buyers see this as a cheaper and easier option to find a home that they're looking for anyway, and you'll basically have made everything. So pricing your home in that 5% below market average zone has been shown to show some pretty positive results. What ends up happening is, especially when we've taken all of the other recommendations that we've talked about into effect or into an account, it puts your home where you're entering into a more affordable rate, a more affordable zone, and it increases your buyer pool. So with more buyers come a much higher competition, essentially. And with more competition comes better offers on your home. You get better and much more preferential terms and conditions on your home. Essentially, because we've followed all these recommendations, buyers will see your home as a cheaper and easier option to finding homes. We'll essentially have made the process and the decision so easy for them they can't say no. Buyers are paying their own closing costs. They are giving preferential repair negotiations. They're having fast closing times, and they're even offering to reimburse for the heating fuel in the tank. A lot of times when taking these items into consideration, especially with the competing on price, it will bring our sellers into a net positive well above where they would have been had they priced at a much higher net positive than they priced at the 5% above range, dramatically well above that. Pro tip to remember here, it's not necessarily what your buyer pays for the house. It is about how much you get to keep after closing. If you make your home a little bit more affordable, then that will increase your buyer pool, which will create essentially an auction-like effect that puts you in a situation where you're saying no to a bunch of offers, as opposed to having to drop price and heat your home over 6 months, hoping for a buyer to come out of nowhere and bail you out. It's a much better plan. So by achieving all of this, what you'll end up seeing, you'll be sitting there, you'll be pulling up to your home after expecting showings to be done, and you'll be like, oh, it's 5 o'clock. They had a showing from 3 to 4. Why are they still here? This is taking way too long. But inside, your gazelle essentially is picking out which room that they want. They're deciding the layout of where their furniture are going to go. Their kids are picking out which rooms that they want. But if those same gazelle, instead of doing those things, are seeing lions, smelling lions, hearing lions all over the place, then they'll run off and they won't spend any of that time. And what we want is for them to spend as much time as possible in that environment and feeling like it's their house. Speaking about sticking around, you stuck around for a really long time for this video. For the next two, we're going to jump into 2 more things that you definitely have control over, but they're going to take a little bit of time. So we're going to give them a video of their own. So if you have any questions about these topics or any others, you can always give us a call, 907-885-0316, or you can check us out at www.fbxhomesearch.com. Thank you so much and have a great day.